Shorts Daily presented by LeBears Casino and the all-new, brand-new Barstool Sportsbook in Baton Rouge that opens up October 21st at 3:30 p.m. Make sure you make plans to attend. That's the Ole Miss weekend, which we know the LSU Ole Miss game will be a 2:30 CBS kick for that one. So you got plenty of chance to get by Barstool on Friday, Saturday morning, get your bets, check out the new place, and even go by there after the game on the 22nd, which is when they play Ole Miss. Tommy Krysan joining us today from Tremonti's Meat and Seafood. TK, LSU this week at Florida, playing in the swamp at night. A great atmosphere, man. I'm been down there for night games in the swamp, and man, it is pretty awesome. What's the latest on the line and the point spread?
Well, Florida's still a 2.5-point favorite. The over/under is 51.5. Really, no movement there since it opened, and I don't guess it will move. We're here on Wednesday, unless there's some report about a major player for either team being injured. But you're right. The swamp is the swamp, and Florida maybe not. Their bite's not as big as it was many years ago, but it's still Florida Gators, LSU. We always talk about LSU, Auburn, and all the stories that go with that. Well, there's plenty of stories with LSU and Florida. And they've been that permanent opponent from the SEC East now for a long time. And, in the coming years, that may change based on what the SEC does with the schedule when Texas and Oklahoma show up. But I've been to the swamp. It was a few years ago. It was quite a few years ago the last time I went. But I remember it being fun and wild and crazy. And one difference, Ronnie, and you can speak to this. The student section of the Florida Gators is right behind the visiting bench, in this case, the LSU bench. And I don't know that any other major stadium has that set up where the students from the other team, and that's always been a thing, that they're yelling at the LSU players and jaw-jacking, hopefully keeping it, to the ribbing thing of an opponent and not crossing any personal lines. But that's very different. And so many new players for LSU, might be a tough experience on that sideline, when they're trying to huddle up and make adjustments and find out what's going on. That could be a factor. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading between the lines. But LSU, Florida, it's a special thing on the LSU football schedule.
You talk about that literally right behind the bench, and I'm saying that probably from the out of bounds, from the sidelines to the wall where the students are, we're talking 15 yards, something like that.
Ooh, I don't think it's that far.
Maybe 10, but it's short. And so it's very difficult on opposing kickers, because where the kicker kicks his feet, got his warm-up net and everything, is literally about 4 feet from the wall. And so, they are just – it's unmerciful, the things they're telling them. So every time you see a field goal kicker make a giant kick like Cade York did a couple years ago in the fog and that, to win that game, it's even more impressive, because they went through a major harassment and got them called every kind of expletive you can think of, and so anyway, it's pretty impressive. But the atmosphere over there, it goes hand in hand with the kind of team that they're having as well. So I'm curious to see if there's a little disappointment in this year's Gators, if that affects the atmosphere. I know a ton of UL Lafayette boosters and people close to that program, friends of Billy Napier, are making the trip. I know personally some people that are going up Friday, getting a private tour of the facility and all Saturday morning, and they're going to be there for the game, kind of at the guests of Billy Napier. So there's a lot of fans from Louisiana that are Raging Cajun fans going to this one.
Well, that's true, and that's that's the storyline with this LSU Florida matchup. You got so many people that want to say, well, but LSU didn't even interview Napier. They should have hired him. I mean, you got a lot of opinions out there, but Billy Napier's like Brian Kelly. He's trying to get the program where they want it to be. It's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of talent on the Florida roster, like there is on the LSU roster, and that'll be a cool storyline this weekend. And Napier will know how to answer the questions when he gets asked about that. You got the SEC media football coach teleconference today, and there's going to be a question or two that flies about that to Billy Napier. I don't know what time he speaks, but he'll handle it in the right way.
That'll be a cool story. I was just checking. Yeah, YouTube is on, by the way, Tommy. I just checked it out, so it's working. There was something on my end I was wondering about. Why LSU has a chance to beat Florida? A couple of things. One, I'm gonna hope that the Tennessee game was a little bit of a blip. You know, it got away from super fast. You had the 2 turnovers. You're playing behind from the get go. You just kind of got overwhelmed by a Tennessee offense a little bit that has just been on a roll, unlike any Tennessee offense in a long, long time, maybe since the Peyton Manning, T. Martin era. So I don't think LSU's as bad as they played against Tennessee. Now, are they good enough to go into the swamp and win? We'll see. Florida's run defense has not been very good. Their secondary has good players. They've given up yardage in the secondary, but yet they've made plays in the secondary. What has LSU not done very well? They haven't run the football very well. So, but they do have a running quarterback. So, the running numbers are a little skewed by that. We'll see. Can LSU somehow get the running game going, which is the weakness of the Florida defense? Can Daniels put up yards without the turnovers, which has been the key to beating Florida this year? All of that, those are the two things really to watch. Now, on the LSU side, defensively, if they can move past the Tennessee game, kind of throw that out, this has not been a very good Florida offense minus a game or two. And LSU's defense, I'm buying LSU's defense as opposed to Tennessee. I think Tennessee it's just on one of those rolls. It may be their year. And that's what happened to LSU once they started getting the turnovers, put them in some bad spots, and the defense just was on the field too much. Jaden Daniels did throw for a bunch of yards, although most of that was in garbage time. So I see this being a very close game. I mean, that's what the point spread shows, a 2.5-point game. And I think you've got two quarterbacks that are very similar. They're super hot, super cold. The good news is that Daniels hasn't hurt his team with the turnovers usually, whereas, Richardson has.
Well, and I think you made the key point. Can LSU run the ball? And Brian Kelly, he liked running the ball when he's at Notre Dame. And if they can run the ball, of course, then we know that opens the pass game a little bit. So that's going to be a key. Can the offensive line, we know Dellinger's not going to play. Can the offensive line do enough and the running backs to have an impact against that Florida defense? That's going to be the goal. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the main game plans for LSU is we got to run the ball.
There was an interesting thing at the press conference with Brian Kelly. He was asked a couple of things after the game and as well as on Monday about, quarterback change situation. And he basically stayed away from that. And, Daniels is this guy. The other was Harold Perkins, the outstanding freshman linebacker from Houston who had the interception in the Auburn game. Everybody's talked about him at practice as being the superstar in the making. But yet, when it came to the Tennessee game, I believe he played less than 10 snaps. And he was asked about that. What was his explanation?
Well, he talked about they had moved him to inside linebacker, the Sam position, and then that didn't match up with a lot of the formations that Tennessee liked to, come to the line of scrimmage with. And he only played 9 snaps. And, he had the big game against Auburn, and he kind of put himself on the map in that game. And then people were asking, was there a reason he wasn't playing more than 9 snaps? Kelly basically said it was a matchup versus the Tennessee formation thing. And my thought to that would be, well, if you should have knew what Tennessee was going to do, if he's that good a player, you should have found a way to get him on the field, even if he's a stand-up defensive end kind of guy or a linebacker that walks to the line of scrimmage. So, obviously the coaches know more about it than me. We'll see how it goes going forward because he appears to have a lot of upside as a football player, as a linebacker for the LSU defense.
By the way, interesting little note came out. Let's move on, talk a little bit about the NFL football. The Saints, of course, played in London a couple of weeks ago. This past week, the Packers lost to who beat them?
Giants.
Giants.
That's
the
surprise story
of the NFL, right? But the Giants beat the Packers over there, and two things happened. One, highest rated game over in Europe, since the NFL started doing this sort of thing. The giant crowd. And not a surprise. You got Packers and Aaron Rodgers, an international superstar, taking on Giants from the biggest media market in the country, as well as a team that's on the rise, and and all that. So the ratings were through the roof. The next game over in Europe will be in Munich, Germany, in a couple weeks. But the other thing, and had me look this up. Aaron Rodgers, through 5 games this year, and Geno Smith, Tommy, the quarterback for the Seahawks, who had a really good game against the Saints. They came out on the short end, but he put 30-plus points on the board. Geno Smith, through 5 games this year, has 150 more passing yards than Aaron Rodgers. He's passing at 75% completion rate compared to nearly 68% completion rate for Aaron Rodgers. He's got more touchdowns and fewer interceptions than Aaron Rodgers, and a higher QBR rating. I mean, like where did this guy come from? It's unbelievable.
Well, I don't know. Pete Carroll kind of had a quarterback everywhere he's been through his whole career that put up good numbers. Maybe it's got something to do with Pete Carroll's offense, but Rodgers is that guy that's going to always be there at the end of the 17-game season. It seems like that. But when you look at his relationship with Green Bay, when they drafted Jordan Love, and his relationship with the new coach when he first became the new coach, LaFleur, and he doesn't think that they get him the receivers like some other quarterbacks have. It's always been just to use your word, just like a little bit oogie, if you will. But in the big picture, Rodgers is far better than Geno Smith. But right now, that'd be a good point. You brought that up. We'll see what that looks like, 5 weeks from now, and then at the end of the season.
If Geno Smith can continue anywhere near the pace that he's had through the first 5 games, then you've got a situation where, the Russell Wilson trade actually looks like a smart one with all the assets you're going to get out of the guy. And usually outside of Tom Brady and maybe a Drew Brees or something, usually your production as a quarterback gets, less after 10 years in the league. And so, I mean, it's really an incredible story. The Seahawks, if they can somehow win and have a winning record and maybe be in the conversation for playoffs towards the end of the year, Geno Smith will get more love nationally. But if you look at the numbers, the numbers don't lie, and he's even been better than Aaron Rodgers, which is hard to believe. Talking about the New Orleans Saints, give us the latest on the Saints' big game this week. I know a lot of people looking forward to the Bengals in the Dome at noon. I hope there's more Saints jersey, Drew Brees or Saints jerseys or Kamara jerseys than there are LSU and Bengals number 9 Burrow jerseys, but it's going to be close.
Big story with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who played right down the street at Rummel, about 15 minutes from the Dome, and others. So it's a big thing. And I'm going to be in New Orleans all weekend. We got the Holy Cross reunion thing, Ronnie. So I'm going to have a little feel for it. And I'm eating at Katie's on Sunday morning brunch. And I'm sure I'll get a little feel with Saints fans and Bengals fans on the weekend. But it's a big game for both teams, obviously. And you got the whole Joe Burrow story. And you got the Saints getting the win last week against the Seahawks. And the Bengals, it's been a 2.5-point favorite. The line over and under is 44. That's kind of been sitting still. And I guess from the Saints' perspective, we'll find out later today or tomorrow, is Jameis Winston back? Is it going to be an Andy Dalton thing? That's important. Kamara, Michael Thomas. So right now you got to look at who's going to play for the Saints. And then on Friday, when we do Sports Shorts Daily and Sports Shorts Radio on Saturday, we'll have more information about who's going to be on the field.
By the way, no way it's not going to be Andy Dalton.
I would think it's Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's no way it's not. And then you're not going to. Your simple answer, if you feel like you're really in a conundrum, if you're the Saints, is you just wait till Jameis Winston is 100% healthy. You just fall. You can hide behind he's not 100% healthy. But the way the offense just came off of its best game of the year, and you were able to mix in Dalton and Hill, and it was a great combination. There's no way that you're going to mess with success. Jameis Winston didn't do enough, nor is he making enough to where you feel hamstrung in that situation.
So Kip makes a great point. What are we going to hear the chant more? Who Day, which is the Bengals thing, and they kind of took that off the Saints many years ago. Or who dat? There's going to be a lot of who Day and who dat all kind of signs, shirts. I mean, that's going to be a fun part in the Dome on Sunday.
Well, I think the Bengals fans need to be smart enough to not yell "Who Dey" because it sounds like "Who Dat," and then and then the Saints fans are going to get in there. And it's going to be loud and going to get drowned out. But the Bengals lost the heartbreaker. They have been the tough luck losers all year long. The offense for them is yet to really get clicking. In the last game that I watched a lot of with the Bengals and the Ravens, they were just bracketing, double coveraging Jamar Chase. And, I mean, he got a few catches, but they limited him big time. Last year, the Bengals just torched the Ravens on offense and put up nearly 1,000 yards in 2 games. This time, a totally different Ravens defense. They made it difficult on Joe Burrow, although he was able to lead them on the go-ahead touchdown drive late. Just wasn't enough, too much time left on the clock for Lamar Jackson. But this will be a special one. Joe Burrow's dad was on one of the local shows recently, and he talked about, just how he and Jamar Chase's dad are close friends, and they know this is a big game. The Burrows are coming down. Obviously, the Chases are going to be there for this. 1 million friends and family are going to be there for this. By the way, if you want tickets, I saw yesterday, I was looking up for somebody. You can get a standing room only ticket for $125 on SeatGeek. That's with the fees and everything. That'll get so they do have some sections, some newer sections in the last couple of years where you're like leaning on a bar counter. You have basically it's like going to a bar and getting something to drink or eat. You have a bar counter in front of you that you can lean on. So you don't have a seat. It's standing room only, but it's $125 if you want to be in the stadium. And I think you can get a seat for somewhere right now, as of yesterday, somewhere around $150, $175. You can at least have a seat. Now you'll be in the nosebleed, but in the standing room only seats are a little bit lower in the terrace. So anyway, if you want to go to the game, those are still available to you. Prediction on the Saints Bengals? I mean, how does this play out? Are the Saints on a roll here?
We'll get into that on Friday when I find a little bit more about the injury report from the Saints today and tomorrow, and of course if anything would happen to the Bengals. But I don't have a feel on it yet. I'm gonna let it grab a hold of me later in the week.
I really think, and it may just be the fan in me, but I really think that the offense has turned the corner a little bit. And I mean, if they can do that without Michael Thomas and without Jarvis Landry, and obviously Olave's banged up, as you start to get some of those assets back, and I think they can get into a flow of how they call the offense, how they use Taysom Hill and Dalton and all that, I think they can get things on. My concern is the defense. Like, what the hell happened to the Saints defense? I mean, they gave up 6 or 7 plays of 30-plus yards last week to Seattle. I mean, that's ridiculous. And you got injuries. You got players that aren't playing up to their capabilities. Guys starting to look old. I mean, this is not the defense we thought. We thought they were going to have a top 10 defense in the league, and we were going to just hoping we had enough offense to complement them. Instead, now this defense is not a winning defense.
It is not the defense we thought it was going to be. Now, do they have the ability to get to where everyone thought it was going to be? Hey, we'll find out. But the Bengals, offense is their strong suit, with Burrow and Chase. And, I think Joe Mixon's a heck of a running back. I liked him when he was at Oklahoma. I know he had some off-the-field issues, but I like him as a running back. So we're going to have to see, what may happen on Sunday. Noon kickoff, Dome ought to be rocking.
It's just, Lattimore played a better game than what he did in London. But then, Tyrann Mathieu doesn't tackle anybody. He's not outside of a terrible double pump throw interception. He hasn't done much on the field. There's confusion in the secondary. I thought I got him. I thought you had him. It just alignment issues, guys running wide ass open, wide and free. You're not getting the mega plays out on, Davis. You're not getting the sacks from that front. I mean, it's not a very good defense right now. And, Dennis Allen moving from the defense coordinator spot to the head coaching spot. How much of a factor is that? You're having to, lose focus, or maybe you don't have that leadership or, the attention to detail that you did when you were a coordinator. But it's disappointing. And to me, it's harder to fix defense than it is offense, Tommy. When you've got talented players in the league, when you got people like Thomas and Landry and Kamara and all. You can have good games and bad games and fix it and come up with things. But when your defense isn't good, and you get guys out there that you paid a lot of money to, and they're just not making plays, or they're busting coverages, or not tackling people, that's what you are. And I'm afraid that we're going to have this conversation all year.
You may have opened an interesting box with, Allen's not the coordinator; he's the head coach. So his daily schedule, his routine is way different as head coach than it was as defensive coordinator. And 24 hours a day, he's totally different. Maybe that has had an impact on the defense. I don't know. Well, maybe again, let's see another 5 games and see what happens.
All right, Major League Baseball playoffs started yesterday. 3 of the 4 home teams won. The only road victory came from the Phillies. Some LSU news to pass around to you. Bregman hit a homer. Austin Nola had a double for the Padres and a loss to the Dodgers. Astros, what a game. They're down. I mean, this was like a Warren Morris shot. You're down in the playoffs, 2 outs, down a couple of runs, and you hit a 3-run homer to win it. The Minute Maid goes absolutely nuts. Tommy's World Series pick stays alive in game 1. But Seattle's been a team that, I mean, they've been scoring a lot of runs. So, I mean, that series isn't over. Their offense has been on fire in the playoffs. We'll see if they can bounce back from that just devastating loss. Up 2 in the 9th with 2 outs, and you lose the game. But what a game it was.
Well, and postseason baseball, keep in mind all these divisional rounds are best of 5. 70% of the teams that win game 1 go on to win a best of 5 series. So, great drama with the Astros. I texted our good friend Ivan. He was at the game, and I said, "Great win," and he just texted back, "Unreal." Another Mike Rogers from the Texas club, he was at the game. He made a big post, like unbelievable 3-run home run. I mean, it was really, really exciting for the Astros. And like I said, Bregman got the hit. Talk about Austin Nola. Aaron Nola will throw game 3 of the Philly Braves series. Zach Wheeler will throw for the Phillies today. DJ LeMahieu, not on the divisional series roster. He's still fighting a problem with his toe for the Yankees, who also won. And it's going to be a lot. Now you don't have 4 games today. You got 2 games today in the Indian National League. Tomorrow's the American League. You're going to have like a 3:30 and a 7:30 where there won't be an overlap. So you get to watch plenty of postseason baseball. Ronnie, I threw this nugget at you before we were rolling, but 55 years ago today, Bob Gibson threw Game 7 for the St. Louis Cardinals against the Boston Red Sox. He threw a complete game, 3-hitter, 10 strikeouts to wrap up the series for the Cardinals. But wait, that was his 3rd complete game of that World Series. He threw a complete game in Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3. Bob Gibson on the mound, and the Cardinals win. That'll never, never, never happen again, where a guy will have 3 complete games in one World Series. So 55 years ago today, Bob Gibson, the big right-hander, got it done for the Cardinals in record fashion.
That's pretty awesome stuff. That is easy. No one's ever doesn't matter the numbers besides 3 complete games in a 7-game series. That's never going to happen. Mom rants, breaking news. She's our Sports Shorts reporter. It just went out on social media. Taysom Hill, NFL Offensive Player of the Week. I'm glad he got it, because I was concerned that maybe the numbers wouldn't really indicate what he meant to the Saints win last week and how really good it was, because you got guys that throw for more yards and run for more yards, and he threw for a little over 100 yards. I mean, ran for a little over 100 yards, and he only threw for 22 yards. But when you take into totality what he did with the fumble and the kickoff returns and what he meant to the team, and if you watch the game, he was Superman with 4 touchdowns.
Well, and he gives his team a spark. And here's the more important thing. The other team, when Taysom comes on the field, they're thinking, okay, what's up? What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? We got to raise our focus level here because something's up with the next play because he's on the field. So, and then I saw a meme on social media. Sean Payton was like kicked back, like, oh, all y'all laughing at the big contract we gave him. What do you take now? He had a super game. He deserves to be Player of the Week, as your mom pointed out. And he does add something. He's a winner. and he helps the team win games, and he helps make things happen, and that's what it's all about in the NFL.
By the way, you mentioned Bob Gibson,
Yeah,
and I see Jamie Fortenberry bringing up the point there. He said that they lowered the mound because Bob Gibson was so unhittable in the 60s, and that's absolutely true. He and Koufax had unbelievable things going on in the 60s, and they finally realized the mound was a little bit too high. You mentioned Gibson's 3 shutout performance. The greatest World Series pitching performance of my lifetime that I can really remember watching and every pitch. And look, there's been greater performances statistically, but the greatest for me was Jack Morris Game 7, the Detroit Tigers against the Minnesota Twins and Kirby Puckett in Minnesota, I believe it was, in the Dome. He pitched 10 innings, by the way. Gave up 7 hits, no runs through 10 innings, had 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, and actually only threw 122 pitches in 10 innings. It was the longest pitching performance in a 7th game of the World Series ever. And I remember, he was just throwing the ball 97 miles an hour, in the 10th inning still. But Jack Morris, who is a Hall of Famer like Bob Gibson, and it was toward the back end of his career at that.
yes.
Turned it up a notch. And I just remember that being in a Game 7. I mean, Game 3, Game 4, that's important too. It's a World Series. But Game 7, Jack Morris, that'll be the one for me of all time.
Yeah, no question about that. Now, one other little thing I've always remembered in the early '70s when the Oakland A's won 3 straight World Series. In one of those 7-game World Series, there was a relief pitcher named Darrell Knowles who appeared in all 7 games as a reliever of the same World Series.
Wait, say that again?
Darrell Knowles appeared in all 7 games
all
as a
7?
relief
That's
pitcher.
Pretty cool stat.
Yeah, he World Series 7 games. He had 7 appearances.
That's pretty cool. That may happen again, because
that could happen. But Bob Gibson's 3 complete games in 1 World Series, not happening again, ladies and gentlemen.
Tell us about Tremonti's before we get out of here.
All right, hey, deer processing. Deer season's open. All you folks that like to hunt, they've been doing it a long time here. Any game, but deer or any wild game that you got, they can do the processing. Lunch special today is lasagna. Mom's recipe. It's a good thing. They got catering. They can get you taken care of if you're going to watch the game at home, the home gating as they call it. All the platters. Got all the steak, the Chairman's Reserve steaks, all the seafood, the great wine selection, the bourbon and liquor selection. The swamp buckets. They got the swamp buckets over here. I know some people have used them recently. They say they're fantastic. It's all at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood, Jefferson Highway in Baton Rouge, right down the block from Parkview Baptist Church and School. Come check them out. You'll be glad you stopped in here. They have a lot to offer here at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood. Connect on Facebook and Instagram. That'll be a great way to keep up with everything.
Tonight, ESPN2, the Raging Cajuns travel at 6:30. Raging Cajuns travel to take on Marshall. They are a 10.5-point dog. How things have changed quickly for the Raging Cajuns. The Raging Cajuns only 2-3. Marshall's 3-2. Remember when Marshall beat Notre Dame and Notre Dame was ranked top 10 in the country? Well, since then they've lost to Bowling Green in overtime. They lost to Troy 16-7. They beat Gardner-Webb and didn't look really great doing it. So Marshall's been tanking lately. Raging Cajuns have lost 3 in a row, so something's got to give. Tonight, 6:30 p.m. On ESPN2, the Cajuns on national TV. Let's see if they can get a win or at least cover the 10.5. That's a lot of points for a proud program. We'll be back Friday morning for more Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LaBerge Casino. Until then, have a great one, and don't forget, let's show you this real quick before we get out of here. Our Ghouls and Golf tournament is coming up at the end of the month. Now, here's the thing. for that. Or if you have any questions, give me a call. Tommy and I will be back here with you on Friday. Go to lasportshall.com to get ticket information or to reach out to me if you have any questions about the Ghouls and Golf Classic. We'll see you on Friday, everybody. Until then, have a good one.
All right. Appreciate it.